The National Desk, America's News Now.
Another offer made to avoid an impending UAW strike. Another denial from the union, where we stand less than a week before Motor City USA shuts down. The IRS is stepping up their tax collection game, who they are targeting and how they are getting to them. Murderer on the run. It is week 2 of the Pennsylvania manhunt as police say they're closing in.
We've got a large perimeter secured that is a pretty secure perimeter that we can push hard against with the tactical team. So we're giving this a very hard push today, and I'm optimistic.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Breaking news as we come on the air tonight in Georgia. A judge has denied the request by Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to move his Georgia election case to federal court. Check thenationaldesk.com for more information as it comes in. In the meantime, we turn to that looming strike becoming more likely by the day. Automaker Stellantis, formerly known as Chrysler, finally made their counteroffer to the UAW in Detroit, offering a nearly 15% raise. Almost immediately, the union rejected that offer, calling it inadequate, as they did for GM and Ford yesterday and last week, respectively. The contract for all three automakers ends next Thursday, September 14th. UAW has maintained their demands include a 46% pay increase over 4 years, in line with what they say automaker CEOs have seen, plus a full week's pay for 32 hours worked and improved benefits. The UAW has been urging its members to practice picket lines for the past 2 weeks in preparation for what could be a major work stoppage, and have reportedly collected $825 million for a strike fund to pay their 146,000 workers $500 a week if there is a work stoppage that could last 11 weeks. Economic analysts estimate that for every week workers are on strike, automakers could lose $2 to $3 billion in revenue. Well, it turns out the 19 defendants in that sweeping Georgia election interference indictment missed out on some company. Revealed today, the full report by the special grand jury that shows there were, in fact, recommended indictments against 39 people in connection to attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Who are those additional people? Well, the biggest names on the list include current South Carolina Senator and former presidential candidate Lindsey Graham, former Georgia Senators David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, as well as former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. As we now know, prosecutors ultimately chose not to indict any of those individuals. While the heat has loosened its grip on the Northeast, in the Southwest, a very different story. Several cities there experiencing triple-digit temps, including Phoenix, where it is looking possible another heat record will be broken this weekend. Phoenix has set multiple heat records this summer, including 31 days in a row of 110 degrees or more. Temps could surpass 110 degrees for the 53rd day this year. If temps do hit 110 today, which they are approaching right now, tomorrow's forecast for Phoenix is currently 113 degrees, and that might be the official record breaker. Sunday or Monday could finally be the last 110-degree day of the year. Meantime, we're learning Hurricane Lee is back down to a Category 4 storm after strengthening to the first Cat 5 of the season overnight. It's currently churning in the Atlantic and could be bringing life-threatening conditions to part of the Lesser Antilles today, hitting the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico this weekend. Dangerous surf and rip currents are expected along most of the U.S. East Coast starting on Sunday, but the true impact is not yet clear. Friday marks day 9 of the manhunt for Danilo Cavalcante. Today, Pennsylvania police and the FBI investigated an attempted burglary in the area where the escaped murder convict had once been seen. Authorities have not confirmed that Cavalcante is the suspect of that break-in. Today, Pennsylvania police allowed the press to see inside their command center, including information about their search perimeter in place. It covers about 8 to 10 square miles around where Cavalcante has been spotted at least 8 times. The entire operation includes between 350 and 400 officers covering all aspects of the search. Lieutenant Colonel George Bevins remains confident the process is working.
As I've said all along, my intent is to pressure him, to try and contain him and capture him. He'll make a mistake. He'll become more desperate. He'll have to expose himself, and so that's really the ultimate goal here.
Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., police are in their 3rd day of a manhunt for a murder suspect who escaped from police custody while in the hospital. Christopher Haynes requested medical attention after being arrested on Wednesday. While at George Washington University Hospital, the suspect escaped. Police have received several tips, but he remains at large. There's a $25,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. Families were unable to lay their loved ones to rest at Arlington National Cemetery today after a bomb threat forced authorities to evacuate it this morning, leaving as many as 30 funerals delayed. By 3 p.m., the entire area was cleared with nothing suspicious being found. Information about the origin of the threat has not yet been revealed. And a Philadelphia police officer who shot and killed a man last month has been charged with murder. Body cam video was released today. We won't show you the shooting, but it may still be disturbing to some viewers. Eddie Irizarry Jr. parked his car while driving the wrong way down a street. Officer Mark Dial then approached him, and the situation quickly escalated. There were reportedly knives inside the car. Dial's lawyer says Dial feared for his life. Tahisha Way was sworn in today as New Jersey's new lieutenant governor for former Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, who passed away last month after an emergency medical complication. Not only will Way be the #2 official in the state, she will remain as Secretary of State in New Jersey, a position she has held since 2018. Microsoft issuing a warning about China-affiliated actors using AI-generated content to spread disinformation and sow discord ahead of the 2024 election. The National Desk's Atra Al-Nashar explains how it all works.
Foreign efforts to manipulate American voters are growing in size and strength. Artificial intelligence is proving to be a powerful tool. In a new report, Microsoft's Threat Analysis Center describes covert influence operations affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party, posed as Americans across the political spectrum. Microsoft says CCP-affiliated accounts have uploaded pictures like this Black Lives Matter image, which was then reposted by an account impersonating a conservative voter, calling President Biden very extreme. And according to Microsoft, quote, leveraging the power of authentic voices, more than 230 state media employees and affiliates masquerade as independent social media influencers across all major Western social media platforms. They're not alone in sounding the alarm. Earlier this year, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman told a Senate panel the issue makes him nervous ahead of the election and called for disclosure requirements so users know when something's generated with AI.
When Photoshop came onto the scene a long time ago, for a while people were really quite fooled by Photoshopped images, and then pretty quickly developed an understanding that images might be Photoshopped. This will be like that, but on steroids.
In July, Never Back Down, a political action committee backing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, put out this ad.
I opened up the governor position for Kim Reynolds.
Using AI to impersonate former President Trump's voice reading one of his real social media posts.
I don't invite her to events.
Nowhere in the ad is a disclosure that AI was used.
Now, some action from the private sector earlier this week. Google and YouTube announced that starting in November, all political ads will be required to include a prominent disclosure if it includes any AI-generated or altered content.
Atra, there's a lot of scary unknowns when it comes to AI. Where do things stand on government regulation?
Well, especially when it comes to technology and issues revolving around technology, things tend to move at a glacial pace here on Capitol Hill. However, the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, is currently seeking public comment for a proposal to include these kinds of political AI ads or deceptive AI content in their current ban that prohibits fraudulent misrepresentation in elections.
I know you'll be tracking it for us. Atra al-Nashar, live in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thanks.
Florida's Supreme Court heard arguments today over whether to allow the state's 15-week abortion ban to stand in place. Now, if the justices side with the state, the 15-week law will go into effect. If they reverse the ban, the restriction will return to the previous law of 24 weeks. The court consists of 7 members, 5 appointed by Governor DeSantis, 3 of which are women. Mental health services are getting more inclusive. For the first time ever, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available to millions of deaf and hard of hearing people around the country. The line now offers American Sign Language access with just the click of a button. Earlier in the year, the Lifeline rolled out text and chat features for Spanish speakers. Coming up, as tens of thousands of migrants put pressure on big cities, President Biden has a new plan to address the crisis. Then Walmart is now paying many of its employees less, how that could impact workers at other companies, and what it says about the overall economy. Plus, a new study found traces of fentanyl and meth on buses in Seattle. What health officials are saying about the risk to riders. We are back in just 90 seconds. Monday marks the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. The Department of Defense today remembered the 184 people who died at the Pentagon on that day. Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks was in the building herself at the time of the attack, and today spoke of the resiliency and bravery of her colleagues.
The events of 9/11 transformed our nation and how we view our national security. It also transformed each of us individually in ways that we don't always talk about publicly. That's why we hold this special observance each year, to hold space for this community.
President Biden will not be at any of the traditional memorial observances this year in New York, Pennsylvania, or D.C. Instead, he'll attend a service at an Alaskan military base on his return trip from Asia. President Biden is in India for the G20 summit, where he will try to persuade world leaders to side with the U.S. on a number of issues, like condemning Russia's war in Ukraine. Biden met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi earlier, where they both promised to further strengthen the two countries' relationship. The summit will end on Sunday. Meanwhile, back at home, the Biden administration's latest attempt to address the crisis at the southern border could include forcing those who enter the country illegally to stay near the border while they wait for an asylum hearing. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has more.
The White House's new plan to keep asylum seekers near the border is an apparent response to the growing alarm of northern big city leaders like Eric Adams.
Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this.
New York dealing with about 110,000 migrants from the southern border.
This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City.
The Democratic mayor striking a very different tone this week compared to these comments the city posted last month.
We know, in the long run, asylum seekers will contribute to our strength like so many before them. They have already begun to make homes, to give back to their communities, to become New Yorkers.
In Chicago, residents are furious with city leaders for housing illegal migrants in desirable lakefront areas, while homeless Chicagoans sleep on the streets.
I don't want them there. Take them someplace else or send them back to Venezuela. I don't care where they go. This is wrong.
Only a fraction of these new arrivals came on buses paid for by Texas, a campaign by Governor Greg Abbott to draw attention to the crisis. Since April of 2022, Abbott has sent about 34,000 migrants to sanctuary cities such as Boston, New York, Chicago, and LA, compared to the hundreds of thousands who have crossed into the country illegally during that time span.
As cities and states fight over federal dollars, Texas is projected to spend $9.5 billion in state funding through 2025 through Operation Lone Star to deal with the migration crisis. $4.5 billion of that has already been spent. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now. Kayla, thank you. Walmart is paying some new hires less than it would have earlier this year. The retailer reduced starting wages for some positions by about $1 in July. It signals that the labor market is cooling. Existing employees have not yet been affected by this, but the move could lead to other chains also reducing starting pay. The IRS is cracking down on tax evasion. The agency announced today it will start going after 1,600 millionaires and 75 large business partnerships that owe hundreds of millions of dollars in past due taxes. The commissioner said AI tools and new federal funds will allow them to pursue wealthy people who have, quote, cut corners. The new effort could start in October. We turn now to that concerning newly discovered security breach on iPhones and iPads. Researchers say the spyware called Pegasus can give a hacker complete access to the entire contents of your device without you clicking any kind of nefarious link. In response, Apple has released a major security update. To install it, just head to your phone settings, select General, and then Software Update. The fallout continues for Soccer Federation President Luis Rubiales. Today, Spanish state prosecutors accused the leader of sexual assault and coercion, all of it stemming from that unsolicited kiss that Rubiales gave soccer star Jenny Hermoso on the lips after the Women's World Cup victory. If found guilty, Rubiales could face up to 4 years in prison. There's COVID, and then there's what you have to deal with as a result. Scientists are just now starting to unravel some of the biggest mysteries surrounding the many illnesses that can linger or sometimes emerge months after diagnosis. Because of the confusion around that, finding the right treatment remains a challenge. But one doctor turned medical detective is making great strides. Full Measure's Cheryl Atkinson brings us this story.
If there's a singular person that first set the gears turning for Dr. Jordan Vaughn, it's Vandiver Chaplin.
Big deep breath in and out.
It was December 2020, shortly after his COVID vaccines. What were you feeling?
I just felt terrible, dizzy, lethargic, all those kind of things. And I was having some optical issues, too.
You're kind of patient zero for Dr. Vaughn.
Well, that's what he told me. All I did was go get my vaccines and react to it.
Dr. Vaughn is an internal medicine specialist and CEO of MedHealth Clinics in Alabama. He ran some scans and other tests on Vandiver, his longtime patient, but didn't find anything abnormal.
And at that time, I did some blood work, found that he had abnormal clotting issues. He was significantly short of breath.
The abnormal blood clotting issues were there all along, says Vaughn, just hidden from view.
As I understand it, I was making lots of blood clots, but they were so tiny you couldn't detect them.
So I treated him as if he had something that I wasn't able to totally see, which would be smaller vascular issues, and his symptoms significantly improved. So that really pushed me off on a journey to say, what is going on here? There's got to be something there.
Dr. Vaughn was on to something. By the time we visited his Birmingham practice, he and his team had treated more than 1,100 patients from athletes in their teens to people pushing age 90. Together, Vaughn and his small team are unraveling some of the emerging mysteries that, for whatever reason, have become taboo to discuss in some practices, especially when it crosses into vaccine adverse events.
I always say it's almost like there's two worlds. There's before COVID and after COVID. And a lot of doctors are still living in the before COVID world where everything's in the textbook. People would come to me.
Vaughn thinks he's figured out why people who've had both COVID and COVID vaccines often seem to get the sickest. And it has to do with what's seen in these immunofluorescent images, something called fibrin.
So we are designed all to make fibrin. Fibrin's one of the first kind of response mechanisms.
Forms a clot if you're injured or
yeah,
something?
It's like trauma, infection, all those kind of things. You're going to make fibrin as a response to that. But the fibrin you usually make is, again, like spaghetti that just came out of the colander. But the fibrin that you make in response to a spike protein that's associated with COVID and the vaccine is kind of like burnt spaghetti with cheese in it that you have to get a Brillo pad and get it off the bottom of a casserole dish with. And if you can't get rid of them, they sludge up the small vessels and inhibit the delivery of substrates. And those are things like red blood cells, which carry oxygen. And so in that case, if you can't get oxygen to tissues, you're going to have significant dysfunction at every level.
Today, Vaughn and his team are fielding requests for help from as far away as Germany, conducting original research and sharing what they're learning. For Full Measure, I'm Cheryl Atkinson.
A new episode of Full Measure with Cheryl Atkinson airs this Sunday. Check your local listings for times and the right channel. Also, don't miss the Full Measure After Hours podcast, available wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Coming up, traces of drugs detected on buses in Seattle, what health officials are saying about the risk to riders. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Nearly every sample taken from buses and trains in Seattle and Portland had either meth or fentanyl present in a 6-month study this summer.
The outcomes were good. Transit is safe. It was safe before, it remains safe.
But transit agencies say these results are good news because the level of meth and fentanyl in the samples is low.
From the public health perspective, the risk is minimal to negligible, both to operators as well as riders.
But in the same breath, Dr. Faisal Khan of the Public Health Seattle and King County says the study does not tell us anything new about the health impacts from chronic exposure to fentanyl in the air or acute exposure to fentanyl smoke.
The controversial buoys in the Rio Grande can remain in place for now, despite a federal judge's order to remove them by September 15th. A federal appeals court put a hold on the ruling yesterday as the legal challenge continues. Lawmakers like state reps Eddie Morales and Congressman Joaquin Castro agree a larger solution is needed for immigration.
So for months, we heard that when people were trying to use the app to schedule an appointment to do things in an orderly and efficient way, the app wasn't always working. So that's a big problem. We also have to make it easier for people to apply for asylum from their home countries.
In Ohio, the owner of sneaker and clothing store Corporate, Matt Toma Michael, got to partner with the world-famous Jordan brand on a Cincinnati-themed sneaker.
The Airship was the first shoe that Michael Jordan played in. And the brand was like, hey, we're gonna bring that back to retail. Do you wanna be a part of it? And I was like, of course.
How cool is that? After months of trial and error and tinkering with different concepts, Toma Michael's vision was finally clear. The Queen City Jordans. The shoes are now on sale for $150 a pair. Coming up, American tennis star Coco Gauff is on a roll. What's standing between her and her first major title? No gold for the USA at the Basketball World Cup. The men in red, white, and blue just couldn't pull out a win against Germany. 113-111 was the final. The U.S. does have a shot at bronze, however, when they take on Canada on Sunday morning. Another American lost today. Ben Shelton defeated by tournament favorite Novak Djokovic in the men's semifinals of the U.S. Open. However, the unseeded 20-year-old well surpassed expectations, making it this far. But there was good news for one American athlete. Teen tennis star Coco Gauff has continued her winning streak, securing a spot in the U.S. Open final after beating out Karolina Muchova in last night's semifinals. National Desk, we invite you to join us again this evening for more news. I'm Amira David. Thanks for watching.